What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. J. Hill. And man, I just wrapped an incredible interview with my man, Kenny Robinson from Freedom Fighting Missionaries.
I had hopes of getting out of prison, being able to stay out of prison, and being able to take care of myself and my family, but my mind would not allow me to dream this big and it be realistic. Charlotte, North Carolina was one of the worst places, the worst, at that time that you can be poor, black, have a background, and have any hopes at upward mobility. And those studies are primarily focused on urban areas, black areas, right, that affect upward mobility the most. So what that meant for me was running around the city of Charlotte begging for a 7.925 cents an hour job, which after 40 attempts is what I got, making $7.25 with 5 children in immediate need. And that was the beginning of my journey in Charlotte.
Kenny is a superstar. You know, I've told him this. He's an incredible guy, incredible story. After spending so much time in prison, now he's putting in the work to not only help the people of Charlotte, but also like build this amazing organization.
And another way, we in some cases literally had to kick doors down, right, and be willing to again call you 100 times, email you 100 times, lie and wait outside your office, right, and beg for an opportunity to just sit down and let us explain to you what we're faced with and what we're trying to do. But there was a time where I felt like every hour and every minute needed to be committed to the work, like needed to be committed to what I was trying to do, and that actually hurt more than it helped. Right? So now that I'm making space for myself, making space for my family, I'm actually more productive. So I actually cost myself some time. Right, by not investing in my own self-care.
Kenny was the first person I reached out to be on the Power Mixer panel. There's a lot of people doing great work as it relates to social capital in Charlotte. You know, shout out to Sherry Chisholm, Leading on Opportunity, my girl Tanya Jameson. Tons of great work is being done, but I wanted to go beyond the data. I wanted to talk about a real person who had incredible odds coming out of prison and who has worked their way to sit down with the likes of Hugh McCall, getting incredible amounts of money from the city to do great work. Like, that's not an easy feat. And so I wanted to go beyond the data and talk to someone who had done it for real, who had built social capital here in Charlotte and how they did it.
Well, it's one thing that is easy to do is tell the truth.
That's right.
It costs you nothing to tell the truth. We talking about business, right? We talking about humanitarian services and stuff. I'm in a position to say the things that sometimes they can't say. They may want to say it, right? But from their position, right? I may be talking to the person in front of me that works for or represents that institution, but I'm not talking to them personally, right? And not speaking out against them in a personal attack as if it's this one person and it's you the reason why. Right? And a lot of times, right, we're speaking for those in the public, right, that they may not have the confidence, the expertise, right, or the desire to get up there and say those things, but they still need to be said.
And Kenny was super gracious to open up the vault and talk about all his great work. So shout out to Kenny. All right. So enjoy this episode. We'll see you soon. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. J. Hill, back with another episode of the Power Mixer podcast. And listen, my next guest, I owe a lot of gratitude to him. Everything, anytime, whatever. I say, Kenny, I need your help. I need you to do this for me. I owe him like 3 steak dinners, or I don't know if he eats steak or shrimp or whatever. If he's vegan like me, whatever he want, we got to get some lunch on the table or some dinner on the calendar. But I got the one and only Kenny Robinson, Freedom Fighting Missionaries. Man, brother, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your support and everything that you've done for me. Nothing is ever taken lightly. I appreciate your time. I feel like I know how busy you are, how entrenched in the community you are, And so for you to take a sliver of your time, even today and in the past, I just wanted to tell you I truly appreciate it before we even start.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hate to have to correct you, but I am Dr. Kenny
That's
Robinson
right.
now.
Dr. Kenny Robinson.
Ever since I earned my honorary degree, you don't get
Yeah.
to choose yourself for that. You can choose to go to college, get
Yeah.
your master's degree, and
For
then
sure.
on to your doctorate degree.
Yeah.
But you have to earn an honorary
That's
doctorate
right.
degree based off of your work in the community or in other areas.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a choice for me. I earned it.
Yeah.
So
So
I
do
might
I
as
call
well.
you Doc? Can I call you Dr. Kenny?
You can call me Dr. Kenny Robinson, but for the purpose of this podcast, you can just keep on with Kenny.
Okay.
But I do like to be greeted as such since I earned it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you helped me kick off the Power Mixer, right? So it's almost a year. We were just talking about it. Like it's been almost a year since we brought the Power Mixer back. Now, a lot of people don't know we did it 14 years ago when I used to have a magazine called Celebrity Power.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I went through Leadership Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
which you and I have talked about before. And, you know, growing up in Charlotte, I always had this thing where I was like, man, people always say, you know, Charlotte's going to blow up one day. Charlotte's going to be this. It's going to be that. It's going to be a mini New York or another Atlanta. I'm like, when? And so last year, 2024, I come out of Leadership Charlotte and I'm like, you know, I felt like God was telling me to bring the Power Mixer back. But he was like, you need to do something about Charlotte being cliquish. That was something that I heard when I first came back from Atlanta in 2006. People were like, hey, Charlotte's really cliquish. Finicky was a word that I would hear. Flaky is another word. And I really didn't understand what that was about. And, you know, because I was kind of in my own bubble with the things that I did. And then as I started to move around the city, I started to learn, even in Leadership Charlotte, I was hearing people say, you know, whether it was guys that were trying to build buildings here or people who were doing whatever business here in Charlotte, they were like, hey, if you don't know this person, then this person may not take a meeting with you, right? Or this person has to edify you before you get to have a lunch or a coffee with them. If they don't know you or if you're not popular. And I was just like, that's crazy. Like, I felt like that was holding the city back. And so I wanted to do something about it. And so that's how the reemergence of the Power Mixer came about. The reason I wanted you were one of the, if not the first person, I believe you and Davita Galloway were the first people that I reached out to, because I felt like you both all, you know, had this, you know, y'all had like risen to a lot of popularity here. A lot of people knew you. You're doing great work in the city. But I kind of likened myself to you all because I felt like you didn't have anybody put hands on you to kind of open the doors for you. You were authentically yourselves and were able to, like I used this word earlier, matriculate through the city in a way in which that you governed how it would work. You governed how you would move through the city. And so I just wanted to set the stage for everyone to understand, like, that's how the Power Mixer was born. That was one of the main reasons I wanted you to be on the first panel. And so if you do me the favor of just kind of helping me understand, like, from you starting, you know, being in Charlotte to Freedom Fighter Missionaries, and understanding, like, how did you kind of like make your way through the city? And I know it's a long story, but like you can kind of start there if you like, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, there's a long story that begins with my release from federal prison and released here to Charlotte, North Carolina at the halfway house that was on Remount Road when Remount Road was still the old Remount Road and not the south end that we know today.
Yeah.
And I'm not from Charlotte, but I was released to Charlotte, halfway house. Because I had family here, I had an address to use in Charlotte, and I had to use an address somewhere to process my release.
Yeah.
And I, you know, had hopes that because Charlotte was the biggest city in North Carolina, that I would have a better opportunity at a felon job.
Yeah.
Right, like the current president said, you know, black jobs, and was true in that statement. No matter how hurt people was to hear it or upset, that's a fact in America, right?
Yeah.
That there are jobs separated by race, right? When you think of the construction industry, you automatically going to think of Hispanics, right? And you think of service industry jobs and low end jobs, you automatically gonna think about black people.
Mm-hmm.
Or the same thing for a convicted felon, right? There's certain type of jobs that's only you can get,
Mm.
right? Being a felon, and
Yeah.
I was hopeful to get one of those jobs, and thought that there may be more of an abundance of them because of the size of Charlotte and it was a growing city in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, but in fact, Charlotte, North Carolina, according to the statistics, not mine, but the statistics that existed, Charlotte, North Carolina was one of the worst places, the worst,
Mm.
at that time that you can be poor, black, have a background, and have any hopes at upward mobility.
Yeah. If you
Right?
don't mind, I'm sorry to jump in. What year is this?
2012,
Gotcha. Okay.
right? Which is
Not long ago.
not long ago, but also right at the time that the first Chetty study came out, which
Yep.
ranked Charlotte dead last out of the top 50 cities in upward mobility.
Yeah.
And those studies are primarily focused on urban areas, black areas, right, that affect upward mobility the most.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we're not talking about predominantly white people from Charlotte or in Charlotte who were struggling with upward mobility. We're talking about true natives of Charlotte, those who have any type of barrier against them, for them to have an opportunity at upward mobility. We ranked last at that. So what that meant for me was running around the city of Charlotte begging for a 7.9 25 cents an hour job, which after 40 attempts is what I got. My first job at a in Goodwill.
Yeah.
Making $7.25 with 5 children in immediate need, and that was the beginning of my journey in Charlotte. And after a year of working those kind of jobs, I was able to beg my way into a car dealership and became a top salesperson there. Then on to finance manager, sales manager, and once I hit the glass ceiling there, right, they're not gonna let me own it,
Yeah.
right? But I was doing well, successful by my own rights, definitely considering where I had came from.
Mm-hmm.
I felt compelled to want to give back to those who had experienced what I experienced, having a background and looking for upward mobility. So in December 2019, I started, retired from that field and started Freedom Fighting Missionaries in 2020.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I do want to ask this. Did you, when you came home, or like when you were inside, did you have the concept of Freedom Fighting Missionaries, or was there something that happened when you came home that you were like, it sparked Freedom Fighting Missionaries?
I'm glad you asked me that because most people do, right? The human mind is not going to let you dream and think, but so far in the realm of reality, right? You may want a yacht, right? You may want a Lamborghini, but you know if you work in that Family Dollar, that's just not that realistic, right? So it's a dream. So my mind could not even dream this big, right? And it be in the realm of reality. So I had hopes of getting out of prison, being able to stay out of prison, right, and being able to take care of myself and my family, but my mind would not allow me to dream this big and it be realistic.
Gotcha. And so just so we're clear, when you got home, when you start working at like the dealership, is that where it kind of materialized?
Well, once I was in the dealership, um, I asked the owners of the dealership would they consider giving other people with a background an opportunity.
Gotcha.
And thankful to the owner of the dealership, Mr. Jim Keffer and Gabriel Faria. They trusted in me and said that, if I would train them, be responsible for them, that they would give others opportunities, and they did.
Wow.
And many of them went on to be successful. And I became known in the community for being able to assist individuals with a background to get into a career and move forward, right? So, I was somewhat of a success story on my own personal social media, and people were reaching out to me to say, like, my mom is finally coming home from prison. She's been in there 12 years. She could be like you.
Yeah.
My nephew, my son, my neighbor's kid, smart kid, can be like you, just need an opportunity like you. Can you help? And that is what really set the spark in me to trust in the Lord and take the step.
Yeah.
And that is what it takes, right? You'd have to trust in a higher power to
Mm-hmm.
step out there, already comfortable in your own right,
Yeah.
and already have overcome so many odds and barriers to
Mm-hmm.
then want to, give that up to go back and help somebody else. It just does not happen.
Gotcha. Um, I do want to ask this. So, like, when you started Freedom Fighter Missionaries, can you just talk about, like, all right, I'm starting it, and like how difficult or what were some of the early challenges as far as like what you conceptualized that you wanted to do versus having to go through the process of actually making that happen?
Yeah, well, when you think of nonprofits and what nonprofit organizations do and who they serve,
Mm-hmm.
right, there's a hierarchy to that, right? And you're talking about serving justice involved individuals, people with a record, right? Primarily with a felony record. That's the lowest rung on the ladder,
Mm.
right? And every other area of nonprofits, animal care,
Mm.
domestic violence,
Yeah.
chronic homelessness, substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
the environment, right? Everything is above somebody getting out of prison or somebody with a felony record.
Wow.
Far as getting people to donate, getting the government to
Mm-hmm.
support it in grants, and getting banks and foundations to support this work,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because Americans, we're always under the impression that we pay taxes. Our tax dollars go somewhere in the government. There's a program for that. And Jay Hill is just choosing to be homeless,
Mm-hmm.
choosing to be out there on the street and
Yeah.
peddle drugs, never going to get rich from it, choosing
Mm-hmm.
to break in the cars, right? That he has an opportunity equal to everybody else in America,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was just false,
Yeah.
right? And the community had to be educated on what actually happens and what
Mm-hmm.
the realness is. And it wasn't new. It's just because we were also in a pandemic that these things were revealed, and the true poverty that people faced, and how unequal things actually were exposed in a way like never before in this country.
Yeah. When it came to like in those early days, did you immediately like seek funding, or were you doing everything like out of your own? Like how from a finance standpoint, how were you serving the people at that point?
We used a lot of our own money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We did advocate to every area that you can think of: government, banks, foundations, um, individuals. And again, this is an area that was the lowest rung on the ladder.
Yeah.
Right. But I did carry over some skills from working in the automotive industry into this work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I did know about marketing and advertising. I did know about algorithms and crowdfunding. I had worked every day with banks,
Mm-hmm.
and I had sat through dozens and dozens of presentations, PowerPoint presentations. Right. So I did have an understanding, and then I came sales background, right?
Yeah.
So I don't mind to call you 100 times and
Mm-hmm.
email you 200 times. I did that every day in the dealerships, right?
Yeah.
Coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and so I carried those skills over, and in lieu of support from the areas that I mentioned, we started seeking community support,
Mm-hmm.
which wanted to see you doing the work, right? And then as criminal justice reform became more prevalent throughout social media on the news, was due to the brutal murder of George Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that opened up areas as well as far as criminal justice reform was concerned. Protests, people were getting arrested, people died,
Yeah.
right? Who otherwise, had it not been for that, never would have protested,
Mm-hmm.
never would have got arrested and be locked up in jail,
Mm-hmm.
then coming out and need some support. So a culmination of COVID, George Floyd, protests, then those actively out there in the community putting forth our life and our bodies, right?
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
In a mask, right, where people seem to forget so fast. But if you turned on the TV at that time, there was a number that was ticking, right,
Yes.
with people who were dying from
Yes.
COVID, right, and
Yes.
it was inching close towards 1 million,
Yes.
right? And people were dying, and we were out there with the
Mm-hmm.
most vulnerable populations
Yeah.
in a mass trying to provide assistance
Yeah.
to them. So, to answer your question, we were able to raise somewhere around 178,000 in 2020,
Okay.
just from community support
Mm-hmm.
and donations coming in that way. In our first year, just starting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, couple things. I do want to tell you this. So when I went to Atlanta to go to school, one my first job besides like my whole life, I worked for my dad. My dad, shout out to William Hill Jr., sign painter, pioneer in Charlotte, and so I always worked for my dad. My first job was at an Infinity dealership in Atlanta or in Decatur, Georgia, and I was a valet. So people would bring their cars in, and we'll sign them up, take them to the service writer. And so I did that for like 2.5 years. Like that is where people like don't know, like that's where I learned my chops. Like meeting, like it would be a judge, it would be anybody that you could be talking to. And so that's how I learned to speak to people and with confidence and everything. So the car dealership is a great place to really hone skills. So I wanted to mention that. All right, so I've spent probably the last 2.5 2 years really trying to understand the nonprofit space here in Charlotte. I've talked to a lot of folks, you included, that talk about the challenges in the nonprofit space. And although we had a power mixer that was about nonprofits, you and I talked about social capital at the very first power mixer. But what I've learned is that it's all about relationships. Like the whole city of Charlotte is about relationships. And so I guess going back to that time, like when did you kind of make the jump where you started to say, okay, all right, there's a lot of money floating around here in Charlotte. And I gotta figure out a way to get to it. And I don't know how you feel if you've gotten to it or not, but can you talk about your journey in starting to build those relationships with the bigger nonprofits and donors here?
Well, for me, um, that was utilizing the people that were around me and accepting the mentorship. So
Mm,
as you reached out to different people, um, they were explaining to me how things work, right? And again, I was coachable,
mm-hmm.
right? Eager to learn, and would follow the directions that was given to me by people who had experience,
Yeah.
right? So as I was reaching out to different city council people, different commissioners, different nonprofit organizations, people that worked within the banking and foundation
Mm-hmm.
sector, where they as an individual maybe didn't have a way to support the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Understood it, but they were able to offer their expertise, right, and their lived experience, right, in their respective fields.
Yeah.
And I asked them to connect me to this person or that person, right, with all understanding. Again, as a salesperson, right, if you can just get the meeting, then I mean you closer to closing the deal.
Yeah.
Right. And when those opportunities presented themselves for me to get the meeting, right, I was ready to close the deal,
Mm-hmm.
and came prepared, having done all of the research that I needed to do.
Yeah.
Uh, One way, and another way, we in some cases literally had to kick doors down, right, and be willing to again call you 100 times, email you 100 times, lie and wait outside your office,
Mm.
right, and beg for an opportunity to just sit down and let us explain to you what we're faced with and what we're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And from one person to the next. And you know, I do consulting now,
Yeah.
right? So I'm selling this now, so I can give you a piece of it, right, in your audience, for free. Um, but in these meetings,
Mm-hmm.
right, that would get set up by other people, and I, get these soft introductions from other people,
Mm-hmm.
and now I found myself sitting across from a funder,
Mm-hmm.
right, who will hear my story just like I just told you a piece of it,
Yeah.
and at the end of it say, all right, well, Kenny, how can we help?
That's the magic question.
Right?
It
Can
comes
we
up every time.
how can we help?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would say to Mr. X or Mrs. Q,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would appreciate your financial support, right? But what I really need is access to your network, right? So instead of you contributing $5,000 or $10,000 to our working organization,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather you introduce me to five to 10 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they also may be willing to contribute 5 to 10,000,
Yeah.
right? And now instead of that being your $5,000 donation, that's 25,000
Mm-hmm.
across the board, with the confidence that I would be able to get them to understand the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And from doing that, I was able to meet and connect with more people
Mm-hmm.
until eventually you've almost met everybody
Yep.
in the city that you need to meet, and at least able to pitch,
Yeah.
right? And with a good understanding of mathematics, knowing that with ratios and stuff, the more people that you talk to, the more people you ask for help, the more likely that you're going to get some support,
Yeah.
right? And we talking about 7 to 8%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which means that, if I talk to 100 people,
Yeah.
maybe 7 or 8 of them would support,
Yeah.
right? Which is still a good number coming from where we coming
Yeah.
from, serving the population that we
Mm-hmm.
serve, right? And over time, doing the work, those percentages increase as far as the level of support.
Yeah.
So I give that piece for free.
No, I appreciate it. So, full transparency, although I don't have a nonprofit, I wanted to, I set out to meet as many people as possible in Charlotte. I wanted to understand the nonprofit industry. So I went and I met with a lot of people. Just understand like what is going on in Charlotte. Same thing on the business side. I wanted to understand the people who quote unquote make the city run. And some of those same things happened. Number one, I went in humbled. I wanted to listen. I didn't go in trying to tell anybody anything. I just wanted to understand. So I remember that similar aspect, just trying to understand what people would say and what instructions they would give me. The other thing too, people would say at the end of it, it's like the same thing. You come to the end, they say, "Well, how can I help you?" And my response would be the same thing. Well, I don't want anything from you. The only thing I would ask for is that we could establish a relationship and a connection, and that if you feel like there's someone that I need to meet and be in contact with, that you'll be willing to connect me with them. And so I understand, and have felt a little bit of that. I haven't gone out and asked for money or fundraise. So I definitely know that's how we don't do the same thing. But I am interested in, listen, anybody that follows you on social media or over the years have seen you, comment about some of the challenges that you've gone through, especially in the earlier years where it's like, hey, so let me ask this first. There's this part where the organization is doing great work or is doing the work, and it deserves, if you will, funding so it can do more work, right? But there's always this challenge, or has been this challenge, or people describe this challenge of, hey, like my organization is worthy of more funding, but I can't get the funding unless I have this relationship or connection with someone. Can you talk about how, like, what that was like for you, kind of moving through that?
Challenging, right? That the work doesn't stand on its own,
Mm.
right? And similar to the private sector, right? Where opportunities are given to those based off of who you know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So instead of succumbing to the challenges, right? And instead of being one of the people that say, all right, well, this is why I can't do this and that because I don't know this and that person, and because I'm not popular, because I'm not this. How do you get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how do you become one of the people,
Mm-hmm.
right, that people want to meet, right? How do
Mm-hmm.
you become the connector, right? How do
Yeah.
you become the one that can build up some social capital with yourself, right? And I set out to do that,
Yeah.
right? Instead of complain about what we don't have, set out to get that,
Yeah.
right? And worked very hard day in and day out. I mean, in 2023, I had 497 meetings on my calendar,
Wow.
right? Which is more days than it is in a year, right? So
For
that's
sure.
averaging 2 to 3, something like that, meetings a day.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I made them all, but they were on there,
Yeah.
right? Which just goes to show how, right, persistent and determined that I was to connect with people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would be able to then get people to speak for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to give you an example of that, a recent example of that, um, after doing that and doing the work and connecting with people, then you would hear like the head sheriff, which is a big supporter of ours,
Mm-hmm.
go out to an event and then he's saying like what I would say in this space,
Yeah.
right? And you hear other professionals and government officials begin to speak about the need in this space in the way that I initially started out. And just now, just recently, the assistant city manager speaking to city council
Yeah.
and using terms that we started out with
Mm-hmm.
and explaining the work that we do. So getting people to start speaking for you.
Yeah.
So again, instead of fall to the back of the room and say, well, these is all of the reasons why I can't get what I need to do the work.
Yeah.
I set out to make those type of connections on my own and become that person, and then being willing to give back, right? Which is why, not knowing you from nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you reached out and explained to what you was trying to do, yeah, right? Because I am busy, right? And it's not
Yeah.
just busy with work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have children. I got 10
Yeah.
grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if I don't want to do nothing, I deserve to that,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, but I know the importance of being able to use your face, your branding, and your social capital
Mm-hmm.
to propel somebody forward,
Yeah.
knowing that that person will then be able to speak for the work, to speak for your work for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which from then until now, you have learned enough about us and our work that if somebody was to ask you, you would be able to give them a brief synopsis of what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then offer your support and connections.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how it kind of circles back around.
Yeah. Can you talk about like when you are meeting with these donors and these people with money and been at these some of these institutions and stuff for years on top of the years, or the institutions have been around for 50 years and things of that nature. Um, you have always, since the day I met you, or even before I met you, you've always been your unapologetic, authentic self. Can you talk about like, and I know, you're just like me. You're a grown man and you are who you are, but there is a conversation about that being challenging when you are circulating through a city like Charlotte, specifically when you're asking for money. And we could have a whole conversation about restricted and unrestricted funds as it relates to nonprofits. But like, for the person that may be having the challenge of being their authentic self while going out and networking and making connections with folks, and they have a nonprofit and they're asking for money. Can you talk about why it's important to be true to yourself, and why it's okay to and not pander or fall into the conformity, if you will, of the nonprofit sector here?
Yeah, and I have to, again, just like you said, I'll have to say that truthfully and authentically, right? That is a skill set that have
Mm,
to be taught,
mm,
right? So, right, to say that for me, in my position, and even you in your position, right, to say to an individual that's trying to come up, go in there and be your authentic self, right? That's
yeah.
just like saying to somebody who has a fear of
Mm,
speaking in front of people,
mm.
just get on the stage and talk,
Yeah.
right? Not understanding that that's a big fear,
Yeah.
right? That person is nervous, anxious, and not going to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost not fair for me to say to somebody else, just go do what I did,
Mm-hmm.
right? Knowing that that's a skill set, knowing that I have been trained on that,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, I take that very seriously. I have practice, I have research. I didn't just grab the mic and talk out of the side of my neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't send nobody on no football mission like that, right?
uh,
Just go do this,
yeah.
right? Just like me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, these are things that now I learn like you have to be taught,
Mm.
right? And again, going back into my experience in the car dealership, right? See, I took training, right? I got 30 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
right, to meet and greet you, right? Because I'm trying to sell you a whole car today.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm trying to sell you a whole car,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you may have had in your mind that you're just coming to look or whatever, right? But I have to break down those barriers,
Yeah.
right? And I learned that it's easier to do that being your authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not being a make believe. It ain't no sense in talking in no code, right? You may as well be truthfully upfront in your authentic self,
Yeah.
and to do that with an ask on the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because in the nonprofit space seeking funding, at the end of this um, uh, speech about the work that we do is an ask,
Yeah.
right? Just like in the car dealership. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of this meet and greet and this walk around and me telling you all about this vehicle, right,
Mm-hmm.
is an ask, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to purchase it today. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
ask you to purchase it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to build up a relationship with you in a short amount of time,
Yeah.
right? So I acquired that skill set, honed in on it, right? So that has to be taught.
Yeah.
Right, and it can be taught visually, right? There's plenty of videos and stuff out there that
Mm-hmm.
people can watch, but you'd have to take it that seriously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know that we have over time seen sign up for this real estate class, right?
Mm-hmm.
99.99. Follow these steps and
Mm-hmm.
look. You could be in a new boat yourself. You could be in a new house yourself, right?
Yeah.
Just follow this master class,
Mm-hmm.
right? And guess what? Some people do that.
Yeah.
They follow it to the T and then they become successful.
Mm-hmm.
But most people do not, right? Because it is work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to just jump from where you're at and then think you're going to sit across from a funder that's coming from a foundation and a bank and being your authentic self going to convince them, not without following these steps,
Mm.
right? Not without training, not without researching, right?
Mm-hmm.
More than likely, you're not going to be able to convince them.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things that I see that people have done is go through their whole spiel and never ask.
Don't ask.
So as I was going through sales training, and then once I became a sales trainer, right, one of the biggest problems that we had in that automotive industry was people not asking people to buy the car at the
Yeah.
end,
Wow.
right, or being fearful to tell you to sign right here,
Mm-hmm.
right. So again, it's more than just being my authentic self. I've trained to do that.
Mm.
Right, and I know when it's appropriate and when it is not appropriate, right, and what type of language and tone to use, right, because as a black man, you be too authentic, it comes off as aggressive,
Yep.
right, you be too easy, it come off as being soft,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, all of these different trainings let you learn how to take control over a conversation when it is appropriate to listen. Like a lot of times I would be in meetings and because of this person who I'm meeting with, it's just best that I listen.
Mm.
Right, and say few words, right, because I need to soak up what this person, the knowledge that they have, right, is far greater than any dollar amount that they can give me, right?
Mm-hmm.
This
Yes.
person is teaching me how to fish,
Yeah.
right? But if I'm so busy talking about what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to do it and the funding that I need, see, I'll miss the lesson that could help me get 10 times that amount.
Mm.
And that is the things that funders and my mentors and stuff appreciated in me that made them want to impart more wisdom in me.
I had another question, but I want to dovetail off that or do a follow up. So there are so many times where I know that there are smaller organizations where like they need that funding right then. They need that $5,000, $1,000. They got they have a trip with some kids that they need to get done. And so just talking about that moment, you're sitting in front of someone and they may not be the opportunity for them to fund you or donate at that moment may not be as impactful as the information that they're blessing you with. Why is I know that's hard, but can you give someone some game to be able to go through that moment and say, listen, this is more important for me to listen in this moment, and instead of feeling like I gotta talk so much about my organization to try to convince this person to get some, to get some funding from them.
And again, that's one of the greatest mistakes that we make seeking funding,
Mm.
right? Or even trying to get somebody to buy something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're so busy talking that you're not listening to their needs,
Mm.
right? And funders have needs too,
Yes.
right? And they have priority areas too,
Yes.
right? And they can't tell you what they are if you're doing all of the talking based off of your immediate need, right? Where um, I say now to the people in our program, and just similar to people that's starting smaller organizations or have immediate needs,
Mm.
right? Did you go on 40 interviews, right?
Mm.
Did you get told no 40 times? Well, I did,
Yeah.
right? So when you come to me saying, because of my record and because I'm black or I'm tall or I'm skinny or I'm a woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the reason why, right? I've been on three, and well, you might need to go on 30 more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Same thing, like with an organization, right? I hear you asking me and coming to me, but did you go to 15 people? Are you willing to go to 15 people, right?
Mm.
And then boldly be able to say that to the person that you're sitting across from,
Mm.
right? Mr. Jones, after you, I have 13 other people, right? Because this is how great the need is, right? That I'm willing to sacrifice my time, right? That
Mm-hmm.
my day doesn't finish until 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm trying to meet with so many people because this need is so great, right?
Yeah.
That when people sense that persistence, that determination, that passion, they're more likely to give then,
Mm.
right? So I have been in situations like that, right, where the funder is a funder of a foundation,
Mm-hmm.
right, of an organization, right, of a bank,
Yeah.
right, that this turnaround wouldn't be that fast anyway, Kenny. If I wanted to do it, it's going to still take X amount of time to process,
Yeah.
and you got to fill out the paperwork, and
Yeah.
that's got to be vetted. But I have moved that person to their personal pocket,
Mm.
right? Because they see the persistence, they see the determination, right? They see the hard work, and move that person to then reach out to three other people like them,
Yeah.
right? And say, well, I've give to Kenny 250. Can you match it,
Mm.
right? And next thing I know, I have exceeded, my fundraising goal. But this is with a level of persistence and determination that would have to be taught and then would have to, be put into action.
Yeah. I asked. I think I believe I asked this at the Power Mix, but I'm gonna ask it here, and I think we can dive into it a little bit more. I've always wondered. You just so eloquently talked about the hard work that you put in, the learning, things that you have to learn and develop a skill set to do things at the level that you've been able to do and others do here in Charlotte as it relates to funding or fundraising or anything else. Like if you want to be good at something, like you have to put the work in. But I've always wondered, like, but I believe as a publicist, I'm like, Kenny is a star. Kenny Robinson is a star. Like Kenny, I watched you. Well, the first time I met you was at Living Waters Inc. They had you was on a panel,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw you there with some Jordans on, lean over, and just tell your story. And I was like, oh, he cooking. I was like, he cooking up in here, and cooking so much. My wife was like, I want to meet him. I was like, okay, all right, relax. You know what I'm saying? But no, like I think we introduced you all. But my point is, like, do you have to be a superstar, you know what I mean, to be as successful as you have been in the nonprofit space or any space, or is it just hard work?
Um, for one, I mean, I have a ninth grade education and a GED on paper,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so there's a quote, right, from the 25th President Herbert Hoover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that quote, he states that persistence and determination alone, right, are omnipotent, right?
Mm.
And omnipotence is a word that people use to describe
God,
God,
yes.
right? That persistence and determination alone, right, can help you achieve anything that your mind set out with, right?
Mm.
And also in that same quote, right, it also says education will not, right? The world is full of educated fools,
Yeah.
right? Genius will not, right? Like genius is almost like a proverb, it says in
Mm.
that, right? So talent will not, like so many unsuccessful people with talent,
Mm-hmm.
but those who are persistent and those who are determined. And when you look at some of the greatest success stories in American that outside of race,
Mm-hmm.
right, you will see the persistence and determination in a Thomas Edison,
Mm.
right. You'll see the persistence and determination in a Bill Gates, right, a
Yes.
Steve Jobs, right. That failure after failure after failure, never giving up. Right now, you see the end result,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you don't see him in a garage tinkering, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people saying you crazy, right? You should just go to bed and up at 3 o'clock in the morning, tinkering and tinkering and tinkering, taking their ideas, right? The top music producers, right? The top athletes, right? See, you don't see Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you don't see Kobe practicing free throws. They know they're gonna get fouled,
Yeah.
right? And those free throws is good money, right? That's
Yeah.
the 1 point, that's 2 points,
Yeah.
right? And their averages, right? You say, oh man, averaging 32, 33 points a game. 12 of them was those points was free throws, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the persistence and determination and the practice, practice,
Mm-hmm.
never giving up, never quit trying, right? Always trying to hone in on your craft, right, and your skills. And that alone will
Mm.
do it,
Mm.
right? But that level of persistence and determination, um, many people just don't have the desire. We all have the will outside of education, right? Outside of talent, outside of genius, right? Everybody has the will in them to be persistent and determined, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everybody don't have the desire
Yeah.
to actually put it into action.
And so that's a great equalizer. So while somebody can't use the excuse of, oh man, if I could only speak as well as Kenny and all of that, it's you're saying like there's going to be stars in any industry, but that's a great equalizer no matter what if you focus on that.
Right. Because to want to become a great speaker,
Mm.
did you sign up for, did you discover, did you even Google how to do that? Right? Because if you did, right, you're going to probably see, well, you could sign up for Toastmasters. Did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when you got in Toastmasters, did you tell the instructor, I want to get better?
Yeah.
Right? Did you practice in front of a mirror? Right?
Mm-hmm.
See, everybody want to get to the end without having to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Kenny, why you don't just connect me directly to the man? Right? Well, you're going to have to get there and know what to say.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because nobody is just writing out checks just because, right?
Yeah.
They all sound like a good idea.
Yes. They do.
Right? But other things behind that is sustain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how would you manage these things? So many different things come into play besides just a great idea.
Yeah.
They say something about an idea. There's a saying about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to say the saying, but
Mhm.
everybody got one.
Yeah.
Just like everybody got something else.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I wanted to also talk to you about there's this thought in Charlotte that, you know, I guess influential people or high profile people that they pick their ones. Like, and this is a big social capital thing. Like, okay, this person, you remember Jay-Z has a song every day a star is born, right? And just talking about somebody being hot and see what you do with that. You know, is that a real thing? Do you feel like in Charlotte, like, you know, hey, I like this person. You know, I think I shout out William McNeely. He talks about the fact, he said it at the Power Mix. He said that may exist, but a part of it is because, and whether you agree or disagree, it's all good. But he talked about people want to know, or funders want to know that you're going to do what you say you can do. They feel like they need to trust you. And so I guess my question to you is that, you know, is that true? Is that the dynamic here? And is that cool or not cool? Like that, if that's the case, if people, because there's plenty of people who say, hey, I'm doing the work, I deserve to be funded. It shouldn't be because I'm doing a good job and you like me, or I'm popular or whatever. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Be the one, right? Be the one that's doing the work,
Yeah.
right? That's in the space,
Mm-hmm.
right? See, again, I teach these things now, right? But to give a good analogy that's simple for just anybody to
Mm-hmm.
understand, right? When you post something on social media, right, and you say, "Oh man, I thought this was a good post, but I only got 7 likes." That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean only 7 people seen it,
That's right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And stay out there, stay active, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
They see it, right? Some people they're reading what you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't like, they don't comment. That doesn't mean that it's not in circulation,
That's
right?
right.
So the more, and advertising will tell you that the more people can see you, right? So in the nonprofit space, when people are doing good work, many people, right, and are under the impression because that they're doing good work that people see that,
Mm.
right? And then when they don't get recognized for that, right? This same funder, like they don't see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then when you see them supporting me, right? You say, well, they give Kenny everybody likes him, they love him, right? He
Yeah.
gets everything and I get nothing,
Yeah.
right? But then I go to your page and you ain't posted in 3 days and I posted 3 times today,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And you
Yeah.
haven't put your work out there, right? You say, all
Yeah.
right, well, this person and that person is on the news. I called the news,
Mm.
right? I
Yeah.
wanted to know who the reporter is. I shot him a DM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I asked them to come,
Yeah.
right? I told them that you don't give us enough coverage,
Mm-hmm.
right, in the spaces that we work in, right? So, when people come to me in that way, it's saying the same thing like you just said, right? Then, see, I can go back and look. They don't see you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're not making yourself seen,
Yeah.
right? And then when people see me, right, one of the first things people say, man, I know you busy because I see
See
you
you. Yeah.
everywhere, right? Like
Yeah.
you on every place, you at
Yeah.
every event,
Yeah.
like, as soon as you turn on your click on your phone, you're going to see me,
Yeah.
right? Because see, we've worked the algorithms for you to see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my algorithm and social media presence knows that Jay Hill wants to see stuff like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm so constant in that.
Yeah.
So it ain't that because you're not doing good work,
Mm-hmm.
right, and not worthy of the funding.
Yeah.
You're just not being seen.
Mm.
So now, from years of that, it's been 5 years of that
Yeah.
now, right? That the work, right, and the trustworthiness and credibility
Mm-hmm.
precedes me now.
Yeah.
So then I get to a meeting now, they've heard of me,
Mm-hmm.
and right, and if not, they only one person removed from being able to get a full scoop, and that's on every level from down from the bottom to the top in Charlotte, right? You ain't gonna
Yeah.
have to ask too many people who we are,
Yeah.
right? And it ain't because like you superstar, super smart or nothing. It's just like this level of persistence and determination thing. I'm keep saying that. Hopefully that it
Yeah.
will get in somebody's head,
Yeah.
right? So that's
Yeah.
my answer to that.
No, cool. Listen, I remember the first time we actually spent time together was at the what was it? The Faith Housing event, I believe. Is what's it called?
Yeah,
It's the Faith Housing because it's where they
the
help.
housing initiative from the they just had one yesterday from the CJI. That is the newspaper
Yeah.
coalition. They just had the event the other day.
Yeah. And so I met you out there and I was laughing because like you and I were like you were trying to eat lunch and we were talking and like
Faith and Housing
Faith and
Initiative
Housing,
from
that's what it
last
was.
year
Yes.
that was at the convention
Convention
center,
center.
but we did have another one like last week I spoke
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Yeah, but last year when you and I like formally met,
Yeah.
like it was like 10 people came up to you like in the
Yeah.
span of 30 minutes and like to your point, your reputation, who you were are in the community, with like people wanted to meet you. And I can say that like I know I've worked hard over the past 2 years to be able to establish some semblance of that where before I get in the room, people know who I am. And when I walk in the room, that's an opportunity to build and to grow with someone or take advantage of an opportunity if that's what I'm looking for, right? For my business. Can you talk about now like from a bigger scale standpoint, like you've done a lot of work and you have a lot of relationships and connections, but now like you talked even earlier about being able to see further ahead from this space now than you were maybe 5 years ago. Can you talk about now what you deal with from being able to have an organization that does so much for so many people and managing that every day while at the same time having to go out and fundraise and connect and build relationships? How do you manage all of that right now?
Well, I mean, I fell out on my feet last year doing.
Really?
Yes, I did. At was Labor Day weekend, right? So much stress, so much running around, right? Eating fast food every day,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not investing in enough personal self care,
Uh-huh.
right? So there was a sacrifice, right, to my body, mind, and spirit and soul,
Yeah.
right? That I don't advise, right, pursuing anything, right? But I went through that, right, and then learned from that,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you know, nothing is more important than your own self care, and the things that you aspire to do won't matter if you're in a hospital bed, right?
Yeah.
Or you have a stroke and now you
Mm.
paralyzed on one side of your body and can't
Mm-hmm.
even speak, right? Or you going on away from here,
Yeah.
right? So um, how I'm able to, you know, manage and juggle all of those things now is creating a space from that.
Yeah.
That's not self taught, right? So every Friday at 9:30, I have mental health therapy with a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Every day, I am speaking to, you know, one of my board members, right? That's just general conversation, right? I am seeking out and making time for my own children,
Mm-hmm.
right? And trying to do things with them and for them, and finding time to do what I like to do, which is working with my plants, working with my gardens. I'm trying to get yard of the month, right,
For sure.
at my
For
house,
sure. I need to
right.
sign in my yard.
But there was a time where I felt like every hour and every minute needed to be committed to the work, right? Needed
Yeah.
to be committed to what I was trying to do. And that actually hurt more than it helped,
Yeah.
right? So now that I'm making space for myself, making space for my family, I'm actually more productive,
Mm.
right? See, I was under the false impression that, like, if I'm always working, right, then I may get there faster.
Yeah.
So I actually cost myself some time,
Mm.
right, by
Mm.
not investing in my own self care
Yeah.
and not coming at an angle with space,
Yeah.
right? And then people were able to see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you look tired,
Mm.
right? You look like you wore out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not able to speak the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not properly taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm definitely not at as much things as I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is because I don't have to,
Yeah.
right? Because I have gotten to a point where I just don't have to be at everything.
Yeah.
And the other part is that I've made uh, space for myself.
Yeah.
So my advice to anybody is to never lose sight of self, and you know what's really important.
Yeah.
Nothing is more important than
Yeah.
your own family, right?
Yeah.
Because you can lose, right, what you love the most in your own family in search of, you know,
Mm.
wealth, money, position,
Mm-hmm.
right, trying to help others,
Yeah.
right, and you lose the things that's greater to you trying to do that. And I'm nearly on the verge of that self, and nearly on the verge of losing myself,
Mm.
right, in the work. And I assure you, it ain't worth that.
Yeah. And I can attest to everything you're saying right now because for me, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is like it's like the vision. You see it so much and you see everything that you want to do. And so you feel like also, it's a calling on your life relative to it. And so you feel like I have all these things that I want to get accomplished. You have, whether it's your dates that you've set for these benchmarks. And then also you have a responsibility too. You feel like you're a person that you help so many people. So there's this pressure of feeling like you have to be responsible and respond to everything and text everything and return, like, you know what I mean? And so how did you, and I know you're probably gonna say it's a health thing, but like what helped you say, all right, I'm going to understand that it's better for me to take care of myself and that instead of being at 60%, trying to do all of these things. It's better me to rest, and I can let someone else do something. I can get some help. I can have someone help me do this.
That's right, and it's always what people. It was always as I was going through that. At the height of it, there was always people there that wanted to help, but you gotta let them help,
Yeah.
right? And now that I have a staff of 9, I have to let them do their job,
Yeah.
right? And don't try to do it for them, right? And be supportive of them while they helping you help yourself,
Yeah.
right? And that's not easy to do, to relinquish
At all.
control, right? And then to trust others with your vision,
Yeah.
right? But again, the most successful people in the history of this country will tell you that they did not and could not have done it by themselves,
Yeah.
right? One thing that we football fans and coaches love to hear is a quarterback that said, "If it wasn't for my line,
Yeah.
right? I know you see me, I look right, but I'm these guys."
Yeah.
Right, because I could never get the snap off. I could never get the ball off if it
Yeah.
wasn't for these guys.
Yeah.
And that's true in this work too. But you have to trust in them, right?
Yeah.
So the quarterback got to trust in his line,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those on the line know that they have to protect their quarterback. And it took some time to learn that and develop that. But that's the point that I'm at now.
That's such a great point, man, because I'm growing. Our agency is growing so fast, and I heard Gary Vee say this one time. He was like, he doesn't even anticipate that his staff can do what he does. Like, so if you're ranking at 1 to 10, he said they're 4 to 6, and he's like, I'm okay with that. And from a social capital standpoint, one big fear that I've always thought about and heard about, let me say that, is that you can't mess up, you can't do a bad job. You know what I mean? If that happens, the word gets around town quickly, and so there's this pressure I felt, me personally, to want to do everything myself, to do it a certain way because I want to uphold a certain level of quality or whatever to make sure that that word never got out about me. Do you, like, from an organization standpoint, like, and for you wanting to do things yourself and not letting your staff do their job, or making sure you're making sure everything that goes out is done a certain way, is that part of it, or has that been a part of it at all?
Again, in business, and I'm giving up a lot of free game. There is a standard, right? And no matter what the quality control is, right, and it needs to be quality control, right, and in the top manufacturing companies, if there is that, but there'll still be a bad one, right, that makes it to the consumer.
Yes.
Right. They did their job, right? The quality control inspector.
Yeah.
Right. They looked over everything, right? And somehow still defective.
Yeah.
Right. Somehow still a problem. Somehow still a complaint, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So there ain't no level of perfection that you're going to get to if you're Lexus, if you're Ford, if you're Louis Vuitton. A bad product is going to get through there, right? Something is going to be defective. Somebody is going to complain, right? But you have to be prepared for that, right? And prepare for what is going to happen and account for that, right? Which is one of the things that I've told the government, right? And banks and funders and with this trust-based philanthropy, right? Account for the fraud. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right, so don't not fund us in anticipation of that. Account for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There is going to be some mistakes. Right. There are going to be some misuse of some things. Go ahead and account for that. Right. Don't write us off. Right. That say because you don't have the experience, because you don't have that. Right. Then we're fearful to be able to do it. Do it. Knowing that some of those things is going to happen, right? Go ahead and account for that, right? So in this work, we account for that, right? Yeah. We know everything will not be done the way that I would do it, right? That doesn't mean I don't get my staff to do it, right? And fear that they may not do it like I do, right? I'm prepared for if it doesn't go the right way to come in and do uh, take care of the heat cases, and try to repair things the best way that I can.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're gonna come under attack. We're gonna come under investigation.
Hmm.
Right? We're gonna make mistakes.
Hmm.
Right? There won't be 100% accuracy in checks and balance. Nobody has that.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, I even advise you to not set those kind of unrealistic standards upon yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you fail, and you will,
Hmm.
right, it's just going to hit you harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And whenever that timing is,
Hmm.
it could be at the worst time. A lot of times things at the worst
Time.
time.
Yeah. You like, man,
Right?
if this was 6 months ago, this was me. I wasn't
Right,
even worried
right.
about
So
this
go
at
ahead and
all.
account for that so it
Yeah.
doesn't hit you at the worst time that could cause you to sink into a depression or something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. Let's talk about like just the where Freedom Fighter Missionaries is now. Anything you have on the horizon. Let's make sure we talk about that.
Well, the greatest thing that we have, that we're working on right now, is to get our housing project complete. Right, we are nearing being ready for a groundbreaking ceremony.
Okay.
Just as soon as we can come out of city planning and permitting.
Hmm.
Um, this is a historic project. So to get a shovel in the ground and get this project up and running, right, will say a lot for the work that we have done, the collaborations and partnerships, city government,
Hmm.
um, banks and foundations, the faith community, who have all come together, right, for the ultimate goal of being able to provide safe and affordable housing for
Hmm.
families who otherwise would not get it. There's been a lot of sacrifices that have went into it,
Hmm.
uh, and that is the biggest thing that we're working on right now. Uh, and then separately from that is continuing to be able to put others in a position to do the work that we have done.
Hmm.
Again, a lot of these things can be taught now,
Yeah.
right? Hard to teach about something that's never been done,
Mm.
but these things have been done.
Yeah.
Um, Being able to duplicate this work in other cities,
Hmm.
right? And that doesn't mean going out to Atlanta and planting a freedom fighting missionary flag,
Hmm.
but it does mean going out to Atlanta and working with other grassroots
Hmm.
organizations in this space, right? And being willing to give them the guidance and instruction to get to where they're trying to get,
Hmm.
right? So being willing to give back in that way also. So um, where we're at as an organization, myself and my team, is trying to get to the point of impacting more people. And we know the only way that we can do that is if we train more people to do what we do.
Hmm.
Not if we try to take on
Yeah.
more people, but
Yeah.
we need more people doing this work.
Yeah.
That is why you see us working with the local universities,
Hmm.
and taking on interns from JCSU, from Queen's University,
Hmm.
from UNC Charlotte, right, and working to inspire social workers to enter into this field of work, so we can reach more people by imparting in more people, so they can
Hmm.
get out there and do the work.
Yeah. Last question is, I've always wanted to ask you this. Like I've seen you, uh, you know, fussing at city council and from a social capital, everything that I'm talking about, I want to look at it from a social capital lens. Is that, everyone doesn't have the confidence to be able to do that. And I've always wondered, is that because, when you go and you speak passionately about the work that you're doing, right? And you point out either the discrepancies or the inconsistencies that local government may be, having, or even when you've talked about institutions here in Charlotte and, what they're funding and not funding. Do you do that from a perspective of course, you're passionate about what you do and you've researched and understood what's going on, but because you have relationships with city government or institutions, does that give you the confidence to say what needs to be said that other people may be afraid to say, or is it just Kenny just gonna point it out and say how it is?
Well, I mean, it's one thing that is easy to do is tell the truth.
That's right.
Right, cost you nothing to tell the truth. Right, but I do, like, I know them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we do have relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're not talking about, this is not personal,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about business, right? We're talking about humanitarian services and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? And I know, right, that I'm in a position to say the things that sometimes they can't say. They may
Mm.
want to say it, right?
Yeah.
But from their position, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these places, see, they're at work,
Yeah.
right? And see, we're our own organization, right? I'm the founder,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can say these things in this way,
Yeah.
right? Which is not a direct shot at an individual person, right? So
Yeah.
I'm talking about an institution. I
Mm.
may be talking to the person in front of me that works for, represents that institution, but I'm not talking to them personally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not speaking out of, against them in a personal attack as if it's this one person
Yeah.
and it's you the reason why, right?
Yeah.
But these things still need to be said,
Mm-hmm.
and said in a way so that the public can hear it. And a lot of times, right, we're speaking for those in the public, right,
Mm-hmm.
that they may not have the confidence, the expertise, right, or the desire to get up there and say those things, but
Yeah.
they still need to be said.
Yeah.
And the proof that have come from that is that by doing that, here is the results,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the results have been for us that we've been able to grow, uh, and grow in a way to where I can now step aside and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right. So what we do at Freedom Fight Missionaries, it ain't no more layering to that.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is how it go. This is what we do. This is the population that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I have no intention to solve for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to move from this space now. I'm an expert in domestic violence. I'm an expert in
Because the
substance
funding done
abuse.
shifted over there.
Nah, I'm over here, and this is the lane
Yeah. Yeah.
that we operate in. So.
Yeah.
Glad to be able to, give you and your audience some free game.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
I would love to come back, but it'll be more casual next time. It will not be so much
No,
free game.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, man. Shout out everything, man. Tell people where to follow you, all your website, everything.
So easy to find us now. Only thing you have to do is Google Freedom Fighting Missionaries. We are
Awesome.
across all social media sites:
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, X. So you can't miss us. You can say to Siri,
Mm-hmm.
Siri, who is Freedom Fighting
Oh,
Missionaries.
that's amazing.
You can say to Alexa, tell me about Freedom Fighting
Yeah,
Missionaries.
that's
Who
dope.
is Freedom Fighting Missionaries? It'll come up.
Yeah.
So many pages now on Google.
Mm-hmm.
So many news stories. I've done news stories internationally now. Last year I did an article with in the UK with a French news media, with Germany news media,
Wow.
right? So we're internationally recognized
Mm-hmm.
for the work and easy to find.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
In any programs, or if there's somebody that needs your help or support, anything you want to tell them, new programs, anything that you want to communicate.
To visit our website and our social media to stay current, you can sign up for our newsletter.
Okay.
On that is information on how you can learn to do the work that we can do. Like I said, I am doing some consulting now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that information is available on how to book for that on our website.
Awesome.
Freedom Fighting Missionaries.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, man, I appreciate you being on the show. Always answering my call, my text messages, or whatever. We scheduling dinner before you leave. I'm gonna walk you to the car and we getting that done. So hey y'all, I appreciate you. Man, wonderful episode with Dr. Kenny Robinson from Freedom Fighter Missionaries. I appreciate you being on the show. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you.